All right, this is Dan Mean for MMA Manifesto, and we're doing a series of Where Are They Now features. And today we have UFC veteran and Australian MMA pioneer Brad Morris. Brad, how are you?
Good, thanks, Dan.
Thanks for stopping by. First off, can you tell us a little bit about your background, sort of as much as, or as little as you want to share?
Yeah, sure. How far would you like me to go back?
Yeah, you can go right
Pre-MMA
up to
and how I
this.
got into that, and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, okay. Basically, if we go back to 2000, I'll start there. I saw my first MMA match. That was on a an old VHS cassette, and it was Ultimate Ken Shamrock. And I remember watching that, a little mesmerized actually, at the realness of it. And yeah, that sort of started me on a bit of a journey back then, into martial arts and mixed martial arts. And shortly after that, I started training out of a small gym in Western Sydney in Penrith. And from that little garage, it was literally in the garage of a friend's house. Four of us have since made the UFC. So I made the jump in 2008, and then for the other guys, have been a little bit more successful than I was there. James Tahuna, and now currently you've got Tyson Pedro. It was his dad, John Pedro's place that we were at, and Taito Vasa also. So yeah, it's been interesting. So I started that with virtually no background in martial arts. I did Taekwondo as a kid for 12 months, but I don't really think that counts too much. And I enjoyed the challenge of the sport. Got into a few different grappling tournaments, and then decided to jump across into MMA and had my first fight against Salah Paleli in, what was it, 2002. Yeah, which was an interesting way to step into the sport. And yeah, 7 years later, signed up with the UFC. Three Australian heavyweight titles on the way, and overall some really good experiences in the sport. Currently now I'm at uni full time, so I'm on scholarship at Deakin University doing my PhD in exercise science. And I'm also the head of strength and conditioning for the Dandy City Soccer Club here in Melbourne. So those two roles are keeping me fairly busy. I've also been fortunate enough to work over the last decade with a number of other sporting teams in strength and conditioning. So I was with the New Zealand Warriors as sports science manager, Sydney Roosters as strength and power coach, Penrith Panthers. I did a little bit of wrestling coaching, a bit of S&C work there. So yeah, it's been enjoyable. I spent 12 months in Berlin as a sports scientist over there in end of 2015, started 2016. So yeah, I've got to do a little bit of traveling, which has been nice.
Nice. So you've landed on your feet then. Um, so back in 2008 when you made it to the UFC, I think the pathway for Australian fighters was probably a bit murkier back then than it is now. How did you sort of find yourself from training in a garage? How did you find yourself on the UFC's radar?
Um, yeah, look, it was difficult back then to get on the radar, whether you were trying to get into the Japanese market or into the American one. Um, I was training with some good guys at the time. Mark Hunt, I was doing a fair bit of training with. James Tahuna, we did a lot of training together as well. And Mark was fighting at the time in Pride. And I had made a few friends in the States, and my manager at the time was American. And I managed to get an opportunity on Bodog Fight, which was a smaller promotion at the time, but had some big names. Actually, Fedor fought on that promotion. I think that was Matt Linland he fought against there, but there was some decent names on the Bodog Fight roster. I managed to get on one of those cards in Canada, over in Vancouver, against Christophe Madou. who was the French heavyweight champ at the time. I got a good win over Madu, and that, along with my American manager, managed to get an offer from the UFC.
Right, fantastic. Now, you're probably best remembered, particularly by the American fans, as Cain Velasquez's first opponent in the UFC. Now, obviously, that one didn't go your way, but it's fair to say that loss aged pretty well. Cain went on to be one of the greats, really, in the UFC. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience sharing the cage with Cain?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I knew saying yes to that fight that I was coming up against someone that was highly touted. He'd only had, I think, two fights. I think he'd had two professional fights at the time. He'd actually had one on Bodog fight as well. And I knew that I believe there was at least one other person that had pulled out before I said yes to it. Um, and yeah, I made a little mistake early. I dropped my left hand just a little bit as I threw a strike, and Kane caught me with a hook. And I remember waking up as I sort of was crouching on the ground, came to again, and tried to recover. And for anyone who's seen that, yeah, you can watch me get beaten up for about the next 2.5 minutes before the ref finally steps in. So look, Kane had really good control. I found it really difficult getting up off the ground. I managed to get up, but pretty much used all my, energy to get up back to my feet. And yeah, there just wasn't a whole lot left in the tank after the, punishment that I'd taken. So yeah, it has aged well. I remember watching him fight against Brock Lesnar. I think it was the following year. And the way that he took Brock down and held him down, no one had done that to Lesnar at that stage. So it was, rather impressive. And look, Kane went on to be arguably one of the best heavyweights ever, really. So yeah, it has aged well. Would I change my first opponent if I had the chance? No. I take pride in the fact that I never dodged any fights. I never asked for anyone easy. And yeah, I certainly didn't win all my fights, but I gave it everything I had, and yeah, I'm quite proud of that effort.
Fantastic. So you went on to have a couple more fights after your UFC release and hung up the gloves in 2010. Can you tell us sort of how your career finished and sort of what the transition was like there?
Yeah, sure. I remember losing the second fight in the UFC that I had. They asked me to drop weight from heavy down to light heavy. And I normally fought at a comfortable 104, 105 kilos. I had a good gas tank, good strength for my weight, and felt really comfortable there. I went across to the UFC a couple of weeks early, and I don't know, it was the food, the occasion, what it was. I ended up losing several kilos. So I think I stepped in against Kane at closer to 100 kilos. Like I, wasn't too far over the 100 kilo mark, which is what you'd see most of the light heavyweight fighters after they've rehydrated and are ready to step into the cage at. So UFC said to me after the Kane loss, there was a vacancy on one of the UFC fight nights. Was I interested? And I didn't really want to turn that down. So I said yes. I don't recommend fighting in a different weight class for the first time ever in the UFC. Not an excuse though. Look, I prepared for it. I trained hard. I thought I was ready. But after that loss to Jason Brills on the UFC fight night, I was looking at myself in the mirror in Oklahoma in the dressing rooms, and I had a big swollen eye, and I sort of was pretty confident the UFC was going to cut me after a second straight loss. So I decided I'd look at other options and started planning an exit strategy, which was going to uni, getting my undergrad in exercise science. And yeah, I realized I couldn't fight forever. I didn't want to quit then. I had a couple more fights after that. But yeah, that second loss was sort of a real turning point.
Right, there you go. So how do you reflect on your career when you look back? So like how do you feel about how it all went down?
Look, overall, fairly happy with the experience. Like, obviously, I would have liked to have done a little better in those last few fights. Probably my biggest regret is I was working full time the whole time I fought. So there was no time where I wasn't fighting fighting on the back of working full time. And I lived at the time in the Blue Mountains west of Sydney, so I'd travel down to Penrith, mostly to train with James Tahuna and the boys down there. But other times I'd travel across to Manly, out to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu there, or I'd travel down to Minto, down to Mark Hunt and roll there, or into Concord with Elvis and Anthony. So there was a hell of a lot of traveling on the back of full-time work. And yeah, again, not an excuse, but it just would have been nice to have 6 months full-time training and then a fight. But, that's not the way it went. But overall, happy.
Oh, that's good. Good. I think that's pretty common with a lot of Australian fighters, particularly of that era. There sort of wasn't really that much of a professional pathway at the time, so a lot of guys sort of had to make ends meet on top of their fighting career. So, fair play to you for making it as far as you did while you while you're working and doing what you had to do.
It's been interesting working in elite sport now, and especially team sport, where you see the amount of support and facilities that, like say in the NRL, that they've got there. Training full time, nutrition's often sorted for them as well, where a lot of your fighters, and even now, until you start to reach that international level, you just don't have that level of support or the income to support that.
Yeah, right. So do you still train, or are you still involved in MMA at all?
Definitely still do a fair bit of rolling. I'm pretty much of the opinion I don't get paid enough to get punched in the face anymore. So I'm not doing any sparring anymore. But no, look, I think it was 18 months, 2 years ago, I jumped into the grappling industry's over 30s open division, and I won that one. So it was nice. I was doing a bit of teaching at the time, so I had several students that it was their first comp. So to get them involved, I said, well, I'll jump in if you jump in, type thing. So look, that was a bit of fun. Definitely still like rolling. I think it's a great form of exercise and entertainment, and mentally, I still really enjoy that challenge of not getting tapped and trying to submit the opponent.
Fantastic. Would you ever return to fighting, or is that something you've completely put to bed?
No. I mean, I'm nearly early 40s now. You can see some examples like Mark Hunt fought into his mid 40s. Randy Couture would be the other exception there. But no, I mean, I gave up the fight when I did, realizing that I'd sort of gone as far as I could. I don't really want to, try and relive any past glories. I'm happy just doing a bit of rolling on the side and helping out guys where I can, whether it's with strength and conditioning or, some fight training advice.
There you go. I asked that question of all of these sort of retrospective sort of subjects, and that was probably the most emphatic answer I've had so far. I get a wide-ranging answers to that one, but that was probably the first flat-out no that I've gotten. So, good for you though. That's good. So what's your situation now? Sort of work and family. You said you were living in Melbourne now.
Yeah, so living in Melbourne, I'm on scholarship with Deakin University doing my PhD in exercise science. I've also been doing a little bit of teaching at Deakin Uni and Monash universities in exercise science related topics. And now I've been working since the end of last year with Dandenong City Soccer Club, doing their strength and conditioning in the NPL. So yeah, that's pretty much keeping me fairly busy, those two roles at the moment. And we'll see what the future holds. I should be finishing my PhD hopefully early next year. And not sure where I'll go after that.
Yeah, right. So you don't have like an end game or like a dream role you'd like to get into once you're done with uni?
Look, there's been a few roles coming up of late. There was one not so long ago with the US snow team. So 80% of that role was looking after the sports science for the US team, and 20% of the role was as associate professor at the University of Utah, teaching on sports science. So look, something like that would be great. And maybe one night a week doing some teaching, like submission grappling work. Because I still really enjoy that. But yeah, not set in stone, and looking potentially to go overseas with that if needs be.
Right, awesome. All right, before I let you go, do you have any shout outs or anything you're sort of working on that you'd like to promote? I'll sort of hand over to you.
Yeah, look, I've been fairly quiet on that front. I suppose I'd definitely have to wish the boys at Dandenong City Soccer Club well for the rest of this season. It's been really enjoyable working with those boys. And a little shout out to Jamie Tahuna, who's supposed to be down here in Melbourne in the not too distant future. He's been getting into some strongman stuff, so it's good to see Jamie still doing well.
Right, there you go. Might have to catch up with him for one of these interviews as well. That'd be interesting to see where he's at.
Recommend you do.
Absolutely. All right, Brad, thank you so much for stopping by, and yeah, all the best with the rest of your studies.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.